Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I am your host Stefan Burns, geologist, here to talk about what is happening in California, the earthquake situation. I feel like I'm at the news desk here. This is kind of a big deal though, but thankfully I don't see there being something immediately about to happen because there is that level of earthquake forecasting where the weather's here, we could get a big one. It's certainly possible. I think it may be a little bit further out, though right now we are in a critical time window as it relates to a magnitude 7.5 in California. I think we'd have to wait for a sequence like this before we get a larger magnitude 8, though that's certainly possible. And there are many signs pointing in that direction. So we could be getting a big quake cutting through from the southern part of the Parkfield section where the fault creeps all the way through the bend past the Garlock Fault, just like what happened in 1857, magnitude 7.9, and rupturing all the way down, effectively stopping outside Los Angeles. What was this? This is like 225 miles or 360 kilometers of total fault rupture. And the displacement on this was 9 meters in the Carrizo Plain, and then it was 3 to 4 meters in the Mojave Desert. So you had, let me move this, you had further extension out here, but you really had immense displacement. Again, 9 meters. So we're talking like 30 feet basically. All of a sudden, rupturing, accommodating block movement up. So if you watched my last video, you're aware of the situation. The latest update for you is that we're having an earthquake swarm right here at this critical fault junction. Now let me show you that with our latest map here from USGS. And we're very thankful that they collect all this data. We just hope the numbers are being crunched right. This originally came in as a 4.2, was downgraded to a 4.1. This is what I reported on my last video. It was felt about for 5 to 10 seconds by people right at the epicenter. Further afield, it was just a jolt, or the aftershocks have been just kind of like jolts that you feel. If we look here, we see that it is strike slip, but actually with a good amount of upward pushing motion, which is interesting. So that's a thrusting motion, and that generally is associated with stronger earthquakes. So not only did the block move laterally like this, you also get this thrust up. About actually even proportions. This is like an oblique slip event. So this is significant. And if we go back, we'll see that there's been a new swarm now here. So this is quite significant because this is a higher magnitude earthquake. And we can look at our all-day view, 7 days. If you don't know how to use this web app, I'm going to link in the video description, and I encourage you all to research through this because the earthquake data is really like you just got to get in front of you. You got to see the dates, the times, the magnitudes to start to get then an idea of the overall landscape. If you don't even know the earthquakes that have happened, you don't know what's happening effectively in the geologic time scale. So I'm going to cue you guys on how to use this, just do some basic education on that throughout this video. Just keep that in mind. Some of you pro users, you can fast forward if you want. I just want to make this as accessible to everybody as possible. I'm in a very unique mental state, and I've done a lot of incredible research. I just want to like give it to you guys all, and then I see incredible things pop up from your ideations. I bet you could, a lot of you could add this YouTube video to Notebook LM and then prompt it and ask questions. That could be interesting. But if we go here, largest magnitude earthquakes on the map, we see this 4.3 that just popped off. So this is the 13th of July at 2.6, 2.4, 2.3, 2.2 aftershocks. 4.3 is pretty significant. This is also a pretty notable historic quake at this key junction. You'll notice, I'll show you the Garlock Fault here on the map. And you see it cut across. It is a left lateral, so it's pushing in and clearly thrusting up a little bit too. Now, seismologists for this area say it was actually on a fault that was like 100 meters from the main San Andreas. So like, oh, it wasn't the San Andreas, it was just 100 meters off. It's like, oh, okay, it's on the San Andreas. This whole thing is a shear field. All those little faults are just being generated simply from the overall shearing motion of the San Andreas. So they're all connected in. So that's the reason why. Basically, one of those faults ruptured. You need a larger fault rupture to get a magnitude 5 or 6. So if you were to actually have a magnitude 6 from this location, it would rupture a significant portion of either the Garlock or the San Andreas. 4.1 is not doing that. But here is interesting because if you look, you'll see that it is where you have this mountain block going like this, okay? So it's shooting off like this, and then you have it pick up over here. The fault trace does a sudden jump. So it's a little bit of a transform section. And so to get a earthquake swarm right off the fault splay at a 4.3, effectively meaning that this probably ruptured the fault in this direction. Like this is the end node right there. The two faults are next together, like two railroad junctions. And this one basically just shot its energy off like that. And it's clustered from that axon, you could call it. But the fault rupture is probably going this way. And then this guy maybe had a little bit of a rupture too. You see some of these earthquakes reaching up to get to that upper section. So if you zoom through, if you look at this, that's a very obvious change in the Garlock Fault. It's pretty linear and rocking right through all the way to this junction. And then it displaces up to the north and eventually even bends and shears and twists in. So the Garlock Fault, as you can see overall, is a huge lever on the San Andreas. It can push and bend like this. That's very significant. One thing that a lot of people don't realize about California is just how much of an assemblage it is. The amount of seamounds and little islands and just things that just piled into California and made up the landmass is basically unlike anywhere else. I mean, obviously there's other places, but California is exceptionally unique. All the field trips I did in college, we're seeing deep turbidite sequences. Other times we're seeing gabbro from the bottom of the ocean, and then seamount relics and giant subduction zone metamorphics and blue and green schists. Like it's all over the place. So it's all torn and sheared up over like 150 million years. So the shaking, keep in mind if you're watching this, the shaking in any area can be different depending on the event. So as it relates to being prepared for a big earthquake in California, your local area is going to be behaving much differently than a lot of nearby zones. So you really need to do a little research on your area. For example, everyone in the Central Valley is on loose sediment. So a big earthquake blasting this way could be significant, but in general, you're probably not going to get a big earthquake like in the Central Valley. All the faults run around. There's probably some sleeping giants there, right? There are old volcanoes. Here we have one right here, north of Sacramento, that just came straight up through the Central Valley. So there is certainly geology all across California, but most of the boundaries are in this location. And so this is acting as a critical lever. And there's a whole bunch of sedimentary fill all throughout here. Okay? You know, the desert in general, lots of sand and stuff, but it's all basically built up of old volcanics. So it's pretty stiff. It's hard rock in general, other than the quaternary sedimentary layers on top, which are the recent ones, right? But here you can have big old basins that are really built up, right? So big waves coming through here. We're talking surface waves that are like 2 meters tall, like just rushing through the landscape. Okay, it can get really wild. You gotta be like prepared for that, because if you get a big, let's say magnitude 8 down here, and it actually ruptures the entire fault past San Diego, this section is the part that's ruptured the least. We don't have data on the last rupture. You know it's at least 225 years. But you know, we have 1857 and 1906 up top, but here it's like really old. So you could get a rupture along this entire stretch, right? Lever, click, boom, the whole thing goes. And that could be very significant. So there's lots of places to be concerned about, to be aware of. Like we are in a critical period right now where this basically could happen at any moment. Though I would say Northern California seems to be a little less developed in its sequence. though it's speaking to, of course, some very big strain accumulation and fault movements. Specifically, the Hayward Fault is very overdue. 1868 is the Hayward Fault. So I think we're more likely to see a mid-magnitude 7 event on the Hayward Fault than perhaps the San Andreas in Northern California. And I think that speaks to the fact that the 5.6 in between Ukiah and Eureka, which we see here, now it's a swarm of activity. Look at that. Now it's a storm of activity. You have the geysers. This is all feeding energy down through the Hayward Fault, which then junctions in at the San Andreas. We had this critical mark right there, that bend pop off at Loma Prieta in 1989, magnitude 6.9. And we've had very limited activity through the Bay Area since then. Basically, you have magnitude 5 events on the Calaveras. I think there's one magnitude 6 event in there on the Calaveras. And you have the magnitude 6 in Napa. So that's 2014. So this is also looking critical. But I think right now the focus is more on Southern California. The thing, though, you have to keep in mind is that we see sequences with these earthquakes. So you very well could have a magnitude 7 in one location and 6 in another, or vice versa. A magnitude 6 could come first, and then everyone's like, oh, the guy was making a big deal over a magnitude 6. And then 2 weeks later is actually now your main shock, and that additional load of energy blasting down the faults from the north is what pushes over the southern section. So let me show you some of that data. Hello and welcome, guys. I'm your host, Stefan Burns. If you're on the live stream, good to see you all. And just got picked up for the first time, maybe, I think, probably, by the Daily Mail. Think of them what you will. But they found my video yesterday on California informative, and they did a pretty good write-up. Might have been AI, I don't know. But, and get around the ads. I have ad blockers and see still how many I'm seeing. It's crazy. But they did a pretty good write-up. So shout out to Daily Mail, and you could go read this if you want. I'll link this in the video description if you guys want to read through it. They even mention the company, you know, the wellness company I have, Earth Evolution. So if you are new here, I don't do these promotions all that often, but I do have a holistic wellness company where I sell all organic tea blends and more. I also have an Earth Energy Analytics portal. So you can look at Schumann resonances, you can look at global seismic activity. You can see that we've been in a global seismic burst now for quite some time. So magnitude 6.4 is popping off around Papua New Guinea, which is where I've been forecasting for activity to occur. That's now happening, has been keeping overall global seismicity high. So you can see these sort of data stats on my website. This is earthevolution.com/energy-analytics, or you could go pick up some merch, some tea blends. We have them all here. So we have tons of herb coffee in stock. I'd recommend if you want to try something nootropic, that you could pick up a bag of herb coffee and experiment with that. The lion's mane mushroom is really good. We have Leo season, baby. It's here. It's now. So, you know, stock up. We got everything else. Also, I just listed the authentic blue lotus flowers on the website. Limited availability, packed by me. So just FYI, that is there. We're going to continue carrying this product, but sourcing is going to take some time. So this is a rock awesome price, way better than anyone else online. So check that out. We have that, but going back to the data, here we see the recent earthquake activity for 2010 up to now. And this is interesting, but we will get to that. We will get to this area next. This is our main area of concern for California. We're seeing basically Kern County. Here's the magnitude 7.5 in 1952. Interesting to note is that there was a magnitude 9 earthquake that struck in 1952 in Kamchatka. And additionally, we just had the follow-up to that earthquake last year on the 29th of July. So that's very interesting. So if there is some resonance there, and you may remember that some of the original settlers of California were Russians. A lot of people don't know that. But that's an interesting history. They came down the other way. So there's this interesting connection there. I'll talk about that more later. But here we see our magnitude 4.3 that just struck. And again, I'll turn the faults on here so you can see the, I need to go out one more. So there we see the Garlock Fault. We see it's orange, right? you see there's not that many in this junction region, and they're usually more up there. This really seems to be splaying off from here. Of course, this is where we just had the prior activity 30 hours before. So that's a perfect match. And if we click this other one there, we see that there was a 4.1. That was in that was June 1st. So we actually had a foreshock to this. So this activity has been going on for a little bit longer than we think. We have a 4.6 here, but that's 1944, 1961, 2009, and then 1970. So like you see, it's actually pretty spaced out. This is not a frequent occurrence. We see this here, 5.7, 1992. So that's the most recent big earthquake on the Garlock Fault, right at that transform section. So it has shown some activity, and in fact, that was during the last cycle. We see this jumping of about 30 to 35 years, where you get high activity and then you get low activity. And so the last high activity period was 1980 to 1990. You had Loma Prieta in 89. You had 1994. You had Northridge in 94. You had a whole bunch of activity in 97, 91, 92. There's some other, you get the point. There's a lot of activity in these time periods. You go back to the 40s, you see a lot of activity. You go back to 1910, and then 1880, you see these jumps in activity. So we are right now in that 2019 to 2029 period, because we had Ridgecrest 7.1 in 2019. Here we see that. So we have had a magnitude 7 in the last 10 years in California. Ridgecrest was the one. It wasn't exactly on the Garlock. It's at this like connecting shear zone boundary, right? It pushed a bunch of stress further up Walker Lane. And well, right now we're also seeing that swarm in Silver Springs. But if we go back, let's talk about 1857, because here you can see the sequencing that I'm talking about. We see the magnitude 7.9, 1857, and that is the 9th of January. Okay, so January 9th, 1857, you get a giant earthquake to strike California. If we switch this to oldest, then we will see there were some foreshock activity. For example, right before the 7.9, there was a 5.6 here, same day. So you had a 5.6 foreshock off of the fault, further away. You also, if you go a little further back, you'll see this 6.1 there. So you had a 5.6 and a 6.1 pop off on the same day. Look at the timing here. This is, there are 1500 UTC, 1400 UTC. So it's like 1 hour big hit right in that area, all rumbling. And then you have to go back to 1853 to see further. But if you move further over here, you will see there a 6.3 on the 17th. So that is what, 8 days later? So 8 days later, you have a 6.3 down the fault, down the other side, which did rupture prior. So there was additional strain locked through there, which then ruptured again after that 7.9. So that can show you how much energy exists. Perhaps if this had ruptured there for the first sequence, it would have been magnitude 8, because you had a 6.3, 7.9, you start to get close to 8. You're moving it forward at least. And here we see a 5.6 a day after. So a big, gigantic event like a 7.9 will unleash a wave of seismicity. So you may not feel the initial big blast. Like you might not be in the epicenter or where the fault really does a big move, but you could be down the line and then you could feel that. And so you have to be ready for that. So we could even see, for example, like a magnitude 6 on the Garlock or 6.5, and then we get a magnitude 7 to follow up, or vice versa. So these sort of combinations, even up to 3, like we saw that one there was more than 3. So it can really get quite serious for a specific location. Let's look at the sequencing on a broader time scale now. Here we see this data going back to 2010. And this is really illustrating the point of why now is a critical time period. Why is now a critical time period? Oh my God, we haven't even looked at the map Actually, this is what we want. We want the secret map here that I made. Okay, so let us look at two magnitude 8.2s that have occurred. We see a magnitude 8.2 here in Mexico on the 8th of September 2017. There it is, okay? There it is. Now, Mexico, as you can see, is way more active seismically than California. This is magnitude 6.5 earthquakes and greater. And the ones that are gray, all these are significant, but the ones I've labeled show the clear trend. The others are more just general noise, seismic noise. All the big events have a clear signal to them. It's once you get below magnitude 7, things start to get a little noisy and not tell you the larger, bigger structural changes, because a 6.5 can happen on any fault that just needs to do its own little thing. Okay, so you have that. We also have up here a magnitude 8.2 on the 29th of July 21. It's the same day precisely actually as that magnitude 8.8 megaquake, because that was on the 25th. So exactly 4 years later, we had a magnitude 8.8 strike Kamchatka to the west over there. And the prior time that fault ruptured was 1952, which is when we had the magnitude 7.5 in Kern County. And if you really want to go wild, what is half of 52? It's 26. So you have 1952 and you have 2026. So 2 times 26, 52. It's all wild. So there's clearly tons of interconnections with all these events. Now let me show you that very, very obviously, okay? We'll look at this sequence first. This is just its own pretty obvious example, okay? We had a magnitude 7.6 on the 5th of September. We had a magnitude 7.3 on the 27th of October, both the same year. So this is within about a week of each other, a little bit more than a week. So boom, boom. Clearly one doublet event. So we count it as one, okay? You have here in November, not long after, a 7.4, same year, 2012. So this is boom, and then you get one about 4 months later. About 4 months later? Yeah, 3 months later. And then 2 years later, you get a magnitude 7.3 behind it. All this together, because this is closely clustered in time, within all about 2 years, you have this. Cumulatively, this is a 7.78 magnitude, and then up to the north, 5 years later, you get a magnitude 8.2. So you clearly trigger something big to release up here. Well, where does that go? Some of that goes back. Now that's some of these dots here, okay? These magnitude 6s, a lot of those are from more recent time than 2017. But if you look here, you see a very obvious progression. You see the 8.2 immediately sets off, up here. This 8.2 immediately sets off a 7.1 just 11 days later. So that's another clear example of how these earthquakes can move. You know, you think you're fine over here in Mexico City after the 8.2 pops off, 7.1 strikes. Are you ready for that? Much closer this time. So they had 2 big pushes of energy. But you also see here, then 3 years later, you get this 7.4 there. So you get this movement there of about 3 years. Here you have a magnitude 7 in the 8th of September, 21. Boom, that goes over. Look how it's the exact same date. The 8th of September, 8th of September. Of course, some of that energy is also still going that way. And then this pings over here to a 7.6 in 2022. Also in September. So you have almost a perfect 2-year frequency here. Going, including this, then 2 year, 2 year. So this is also pinging up like that, because you have this one there in 2012. And so you have this overall flow of energy that's going on, but that's a good example. All of that then moves into this zone. Where does all that go? Because we see how our last data point for this is really 2022, okay? Well, we did have a magnitude 6 recently up here. That's not showing, it's only showing 6.5 or greater. But you see a whole sequence here going down. So you have this energy shoot down and then bounce back up. You have a 7.2 there. That was big. That's right in Mexicali. So people felt that. California, that's a big California earthquake, basically. That's the 4th of April, 2010. 2 years later, almost to the dot. Look at that, 10 to 6 days off. Magnitude 7. You go down 6.6 in 2013. You also have the 6.7 there in 2015. So you see that clear progression. Here it's going to the right. It's a right lateral strike slip. So here you get this all going down and this all pushing up. And that's why literally this coastline is being ripped apart and rifting. It's a lot of activity. You have some big supervolcanoes all up in here, okay? There's a lot of volcanic activity. Think of how that is just rumbling and shooting energy over to California. Already highly fractured. Used to be a subduction zone. You had a subduction zone there, and then the plate got caught and then started shearing apart, forming a vertical shear zone. And that plate actually starts to go vertical around Reno, Nevada. And so we've been having earthquake storm there. Here we can look at Ridgecrest. This is an interesting sequence here. So you have Ridgecrest 7.1 there on the 6th of July, 2019. And then you go up, you have the 6.5 there all the way in Idaho. Nothing else, but clearly that's a big earthquake there on the 31st of March. And then here also in 2020, you have a magnitude 6.5 on the 15th of May. So these are a doublet in and of themselves. And this 7.1 triggered that doublet across time. So we also do see that there's been some movement, some big accommodating plate motion movement directly through the basin and range in this whole shear zone, which is typically like, no one really knows. It's like 10 to 30% of plate movement. I mean, they say it's 10 to 30% for Walker Lane, but this whole area is accommodating a lot of stress from the overall now old subduction regime from 50 million years ago, and now this new right lateral transform boundary. So that's why there's all the Yellowstone. It's all there for a reason. Okay, everything's interconnected. Now, if you go up here, we'll see some interesting things. So we recently had a magnitude 7 there, also December 5th of 2024. And so you'll see that here on the 15th of September 2024, we had a magnitude 6.5. So these are very closely linked in time. And you notice that they're both exactly at the junctions of the Juan de Fuca. So we've had just 2 years ago, the Juan de Fuca do a nice movement, okay? Because you can get earthquake tremor here, and you can get that subduction zone to just kind of feed through with low tremor activity. But if it really gets caught up, then it'll do the big magnitude 9 to jump down. It's going to be a big electrical impulse to pull that plate straight down. This is all highly volcanic. It's all basalt, so it's super magnetic. So there'll be some electric current that comes up probably. I'm speculating, and it'll just zap it right down. But we see that there has been some motion here accommodated recently. If we go in on this, we see that this was in 2018. We had a magnitude 6.8, 6.5, and 6.5. Boom. That's equivalent to magnitude 7. So we see at the other main transform junction there, a big event. We have a shield volcano here, axial volcano, and then we have this large transform boundary there. This can host magnitude 7 events. We could get a magnitude 7 to pop up on that transform boundary, and thankfully no one would be injured unless there's some potential reverse thrust motion and you actually get a bit of a tsunami. These strikes, we're getting a lot of thrusting motions up from the mantle recently. Seems that there's some expansionary event occurring. A good example would be the 6.1 that struck off Cuba just recently, biggest in the Gulf, and that was a big thrust, a reverse thrust event, which is odd. So we're seeing that. But let me show you up here in Alaska, we have our activity, and you'll see just a big clustering. Just tons of events. The 7.8 there a year before the 7.2. So that's a doublet for sure, and that makes sense. These are big earthquakes, so 1 year apart is like a short time frame for them. So that's a ton of energy that was released. Here we see all these other earthquakes there. This is a magnitude 7.6 following up afterwards, 6.9 following up afterwards, 7.2, 7.3. No real pattern, just the entire area clearly showing elevated magnitude 6.9 plus activity. Immediately after that, 8.2. Here's a 7.9 there that occurred in 2018. So that's an interesting foreshock to this. And then you can see this whole ring of activity here. So you see 2016 there, 2018, that's a big junction. Here's 2015, 2025, magnitude 7, the Hubbard Glacier earthquake. That just happened. So we're seeing this transfer or motion of energy all across top and bottom of North America. Yeah, here we go. So let's look at the distance for this. So here's this 8.2 in Alaska. Because if you think about the seismic waveforms, let me see if I have a graphic for this. I may have one. Well, this is good enough too. Here we have seismic waveforms. They not only do surface waves travel across the globe, but they also travel through the interior and the outer core, the inner core, there's shadow zones and more. So when you get activity just in general around the world, it can actually hit certain locations and get activated by these global events. So the fact that we had a magnitude 8.8 recently in 2025 tells you that there's just a higher potential for high magnitude 8 events globally in general, and definitely high magnitude 7 events, which is what we've been having for the immediate time frame, the next 5 years. Everything was activated by that. We've had tons of volcanic activity speaking to that, so it's really quite wild. But let's then measure down to Mexico, because this is where things got to kind of get interesting. We see that the distance is exactly 7,000 kilometers, like right on the money, 7,000 kilometers. And you see it cuts directly through the shear zone off to the east. So these seismic waves propagating across the globe, they are perfectly intersecting, though at different times, right through the zone. We see this connection between them. Let's draw that one more time. And if we go down, then this is 7,000 kilometers, right? If you go down then to 10,500 and land on the San Andreas, let's see where we go. This right there is 10,500, the Hayward Fault. And here is 10,500 to the east of San Jose. You could get one there for sure. But that's landing right on the Bay Area. Or it's landing to roughly Silver Springs, where we've been having the activity. Look at that. That's exactly 10,500. And that's where we had magnitude 5s and more. So, you know, it really cuts this shear zone perfectly, going all the way to Southern California to have activity there. But really, you know, life has variance. So we're talking about 10,000 kilometers all the way there, Northern California perfectly. And then we're looking at about 11,300 kilometers to go to the southern, 500 kilometers to get to the southern part of the states. So there's a lot to take into consideration, which is why I can't say I know precisely what's going to happen. I state that very obviously, but here are some things to keep in mind, which I have not yet mentioned. First and foremost is that we've just had a Mercury Cazimi. This is a planetary alignment. So here's our sun, and we see Mercury there is retrograde. And so with this, these magnitude 4s that we've been seeing on the Garlock Fault, they're not the big earthquake. That's a whole different sort of thing. I'm not reporting on that. I'm reporting on activity that is indicating that something is coming. Mercury is the god of communication. So when he's lining up with the sun, which is consciousness is communication, discovery, exploration, research, that's very supportive of this message. So we see that Mercury there, it's not necessarily a planetary alignment that you would expect to trigger a big rupture. There are other planetary alignments that would be better for that, but it is a critical planetary geometry, and we're seeing these critical fault junctions awaken. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another one is that we have this historic heat dome here over the United States. So it's really swirling. We have huge forest fires, but it's really swirling over here and just building up tons of heat. Of course, California is already roasting, and we have a Godzilla El Nino coming in. So we also have some pretty significant weather effects, and this means changes to atmospheric circulation, changes to atmospheric mass balance, which influences the rotation of the Earth. And there's something known as the Chandler wobble. It's a free rotation of the Earth. The Earth has these nutations, as they're called. Most people know of precession of the equinox, where over 24,000 years, somehow the Earth spins. We don't know how. Well, we also have this 433-day one called the Chandler wobble. It's just a free oscillation of the Earth. And we see in earthquake statistics, I mentioned that 30-year cycle, which lands to right now the 2020s. And that date feels so ancient now that I say it. The 2020s. Oh my God. We're going to look back and laugh very, very soon. But we also see this 433-day strong peak in the power spectral density for a Fourier transform. If you just take the earthquake data and load it in, I recommend you do that. We see that very strongly. So that's also speaking to how the rotation period, the rotation wobbles of our planet influence seismicity, even in California. Across the world, you're probably going to see that signal because now you're talking about the larger geophysical system. So these sort of extreme weather events, don't think that they don't, influence that. It's all connected. We just had tons of solar activity. Now, this, of course, does not mean it's about to happen, but I would expect there to be some pretty crazy things happening when California does decide to pop off. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, if we do look at our planetary stuff, we'll see where I kind of think things are going. Because this is where we have to look if we want to really forecast out. We just see where we are. Right now, Earth is in alignment with Mercury and the Sun in the constellation of Gemini. Gemini is about duality, splits. And think about a fault, right? If there wasn't a fault, it's just one single unit. Well, a fault by definition is two things. Block A, block B. So Gemini lines up pretty nicely with that duality. And Gemini is also all over the place and very zippy zappy energy. It's a nervous system. It's electricity. So we have that popping off, and there's weird things like plasma lights and everything that people are seeing over California. I have at least. Well, this is where we are right now. We go into basically August, and now all of a sudden the sun moves into Leo, moves into Cancer. It moves into Cancer and aligns with Jupiter. So Jupiter is exalted in domicile. In Cancer, exalted, domicile, one of the two. He's super happy in Cancer, and Earth lines up, the sun's there too. You get your Jupiter opposition, and this is actually a critical planetary geometry for space weather. We have this larger basket, and this is why things are significant really on a bigger scale. 2026 has a ring to it. I feel like something very significant and notable is going to happen in California in 2026. There's too many fractal relationships to 1952. The other example to mention there is that we had Venezuela pop off with earthquakes March of 1812, and then that year in December, we had 2 magnitude 7 strike California. So there's this connection with earthquakes in Venezuela and California, just like Kamchatka and California in 1952. Well, we just had the earthquakes in Venezuela. So 2026 fulfills the definition for that close relationship for the magnitude 7.5 in Kern County and the magnitude 7.5 and 7.1 in 1812 for SoCal to a T. It's very interesting. So you get this really big planetary alignment here where you have Pluto and it's 60 degrees sextile to Neptune and it's 60 degrees sextile to Uranus. It goes exact, almost to the minute in middle of July. This is like July 17th, 18th, 19th. Jupiter's also in a 60 degree sextile. So it's a Jupiter-Pluto opposition, which is all about big power swings and subterranean deep earth elements, right? Power amplified to the deep earth. Think big earthquake, think also big financial movement and just volatility. And then these are all in different harmonic aspects as a result. That's a 120 degree trine. You have a 120 degree trine here. So there's all these internected cycles. This one goes all the way back to 1892 because that's how long it's taken Neptune to move away from Pluto. So really big, significant energies are active at this moment in time. And the end of July is looking quite significant because of the Jupiter opposition. But in general, this whole time period is being charged with this incredible planetary basket configuration. So that is a really important aspect of this entire forecast in terms of locking down a time window. That's something that can help you lock down like a multi-month time window for something significant happening. Now, we already have had the Venezuela earthquakes during that. So there's nothing necessarily else needed beyond that, but I wouldn't count it out because this is such a historic planetary geometry alignment. So I've done my best to make those connections as clear and scientific as possible because it is a useful science, but a lot of people dismiss it. Now, here's a useful article by the Berkeley, the Berkeley's seismology lab here. And what they're pointing out is that there is this Parkfield section that has creep. And in fact, it's not just continuous, it's kind of start and stop. So you can have this part, the Parkfield section, lock up, and maybe I can click that to zoom it in. Here is the fault rupture for 1857, 7.9. Here's the fault rupture for 1906. This is where you get the Parkfield creep. And it can be 1 inch a year on average, and that's what it is. But sometimes it's accelerating at even like 4 inches a year. And of course, sometimes it's 0. So this section is quite important. And that could participate in a bigger rupture. If there was to be a bigger event, you're going to need Parkfield to rupture simultaneously and to be able to accommodate significant motion. There has to be some ability for those blocks to push past. You notice that's in the heart of the Central Valley right there. So you do get all this squishiness right there, which is interesting. You have a valley off to the side. But here's a section that hasn't ruptured in 200 plus years, south of the Fort Tejon earthquake rupture like that. Now, there's been other activity like I showed you on the southern section, magnitude 6s and stuff, but we haven't had a big rupture on the San Andreas going down to the Salton Sea. This would be the one that would really hit LA and San Diego simultaneously, because it would be a rupture probably up like this. And it would probably stop at the Garlock. I bet that, you know, we're probably looking at an event, we're looking at activity on the Garlock, probably magnitude 6 plus activity on the Garlock, and we could see a magnitude 7 event down here in the pretty soon time frame. And then in that case, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get a big magnitude 8 to rupture, let's say like 2028, 2030, 2032, like these years. That is certainly a possibility. Only time will tell. We all may be watching this video in the future and laughing. Almost certainly, it's a pretty good likelihood. Earthquake forecasting is nigh impossible, but it's not impossible. If you believe it's impossible, you'll never do it. So that is my update for you. I don't believe there's anything else to mention other than everyone here in the live stream, all 10,000 of you. So hello and welcome. A lot of people right now in the live stream. I love to see it. And I'll just take a couple questions, or at least go through the super thanks. Cat Lady, thank you for the super thanks. And shout outs to you. We are blessed to have you. Thank you so much. Yeah, pray for everybody in SoCal, that's for sure. All those heathens. They need your prayers more than anyone, perhaps. Okay, California being a big one, actually being a catalyst to other major events. That's important to note, so we'll cover that really quick. Thanks for that recommendation. We're going to turn on this big one right there, the magnitude 9 Cascadia event, subduction event, massive tsunami generated there, 27th of January 1700. Now, some researchers think that this could have been multiple magnitude 8 events, but general consensus, it doesn't actually really change the situation. Magnitude 9 cumulatively somehow, some way. So there is quite a bit of research now coming out on how the San Andreas and the Cascadia subduction zone had the potential to do simultaneous rupture, or at least perhaps a quick doublet event. So you could even, for example, like here's a possibility, and this is actually probably what you'll need to happen for this to go off, is that you would get perhaps something on the Garlock to pop off, big, like a high magnitude 6, even a magnitude 7, you could get a 7.5 Garlock, then a full magnitude 8 rupture through quite a lot of the San Andreas. Maybe it's the southern section, maybe it's even like 8.2, and then you get the Rio magnitude 9 or even 9.2 to pop off here in Cascadia. Maybe that magnitude 9 wasn't enough. I mean, we've seen 9.5 from Chile. This is a major subduction zone. It's the last dying gasp of the Juan de Fuca plate. The whole thing used to be connected. Let me zoom out a bit more. This is all known as the Farallon plate. So you have here this plate, the Cocos plate, and the Juan de Fuca plate. You can imagine it. They're connected together and they've sunk underneath North America. And as that's happened, this has turned vertical and turned into this shear zone like that. Okay? But that plate is all still connected together. So there could be movement occurring here that then just pulls that thing in. And that, of course, is going to be that junction which allows for that rotation to take place. You have to think about the rotation aspect to it. Just like a landslide. A landslide will always just break at the scarp and then shoot down and like tunnel and twist and slide. So it's the same dynamic here, just going in like that. So thanks for that. Thanks for that super thanks. And could there be a correlation between this 1855-57 activity and the 1855 New Zealand earthquake? Oh, that's interesting. Good looking out. This is why I love you guys. Because it takes teamwork makes the dream work. So I don't know about this 8.2 New Zealand, but I will look into it. I know that the last big one on the Alpine fault is 1717. I'm kind of surprised to hear about 8.2 New Zealand 1855. But yeah, certainly then that'd be connected. Those seismic waves propagating out across the Pacific plate. So either one hit the other, right? I don't know which one was first, but good looking out. Thank you for the super thanks. And spray work, easy answer from me. I mean, yeah, that's exactly the very obvious fractal relationship that exists. There's even an intercellular structure to space. We see that plasma forms these cellular double layer structures because when plasma meets up, it undergoes very complex magnetohydrodynamics, which keeps it more self-contained. And of course, just like blocks and faults, right? They have their sheaths and their boundaries. So yeah, precisely. That's when I first saw that like years ago, I was like, oh my God, that is so obvious. I can't believe no one's writing and talking about that or whatever, right? It's not in the textbooks. What they teach you in school is so basic. You have to do it all yourself effectively. Poll champs. I don't know, and I won't say. Thank you for the super thanks. Dan, our new mod, thank you for the super thanks. Cosmic Bro, that's right. We cover everything here. You mentioned the basket in 1892. 7.5 magnitude earthquakes along the fault during this time. 1.7 plus according to USGS. Exactly, that's that 1880 to 1890 time period. And look at how you have that planetary resonance now, because that's when you had the Pluto-Neptune conjunction, our furthest out planets. Pluto being the premier trans-Neptunian dwarf planet that's close into the solar system. Eris being just a little bit more massive, but way further out in like a 555-year orbit, you know, something over 506 years of nonsense. So that's very interesting. Tina Warren, thank you for the super thanks. Barbara, thank you for the super thanks. Oh, that's awesome to hear. So yeah, that's super cool. We thank you. We all give you our thanks for your pioneering research, and look forward to learning more. Thank you. And seriously, thank you for these super thanks. So I will look for a few questions in the regular chat, and then I am out of here. You can trust Jesus. You can pray to Jesus. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. You better know if the earthquake is happening, that is the time to start praying to Jesus, and it will work. I will say that. When you really need it, you save it for when you really need it, and then when you do it, it works every time. Oh, one thing to mention, really fascinating now, I had this idea, is Kilauea. Now we've had 50 historic eruptions from Kilauea in the past year and a half, okay? So 50 volcanic events now directly off to the east of California. Now our most recent one has been interesting. So if we look at our Kilauea tilt data, if it ever loads, we'll see that this event has had unusual inflation. The past ones have all just been the caldera slowly fills up, well, the chamber just fills up, and then there's a fountaining episode. Here we see it's been undergoing these waves. So it's been breathing. Now we've been having big earthquake activity in Hawaii, magnitude 6 recently. We've had follow-up magnitude 5s and 4s. So there's been this flexing and breathing of Hawaii really strongly, that heart pulse rate over the past couple years. So think of now this new higher frequency pulse, right? Because these are the lower frequency ones like that. Think of this new higher frequency pulse of how Kilauea is loading energy into California. It's just another input. It's not necessarily the thing that's going to tip it over, but it is another factor to consider over baseline, which is no activity. So I think that's important. Thank you, Mr. Humtom, for the super thanks. I do my best. Now, is this true? Big earthquake in Chiapas, Mexico now. This could be one of these, see, it's exactly what I thought. But that is important to point out. We could also see big activity in Mexico. I'm not counting anything out for Mexico. We could see big activity there, just push some energy up, and that's finally what gets it to go. Like basically we're looking at like everything's ready. What's going to be the trigger mechanism? It's almost like we kind of need a big wave to hit. We had the 6.1 hit here from Cuba, just like, they're like, F you guys. Like, you've cut off our entire supply and industry and everything. We'll just shoot a 6.1 up. I mean, you could get a big event from Vancouver Island, from Mexico, or from across the Pacific. Going this way, tons of it has been loaded in from the Ring of Fire. You know that they're under stress. So there's a lot of factors to consider here. How do these massive earthquakes affect Yellowstone? Well, Yellowstone's a big guy. It's constantly being hit by energy. But for Yellowstone, you really have to think at a like thousands of year time scale, okay? So over thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, all these earthquakes are certainly going to agitate that supervolcano and help fracture that lid that it kind of has. Because you just have tons of seismic energy going through, creating microseismicity and fractures. Like right now we have king tides, right? So in terms of a weekend or a day and time for things to hit, we have more tidal loading from strong ocean tides and earth tides. The new moon is tomorrow and it's at its super moon position. So it's a super new moon tomorrow. That could be something that pushes over the edge, right? That's a celestial influence. You could also have a solar influence. But for Yellowstone, it's just getting this energy over thousands of years. And then more so, it's like measuring the magma composition. It's super enriched in volatiles, showing like this inherent explosivity. Okay, we got problems, right? I'm not sure that's been seen. The Yellowstone geologists are saying everything's normal, but I'm also just, I'm skeptical of everything. So, you know, it's important to track all this stuff. Maybe this earthquake is just coming in. It said 5.6 Chiapas. What's the likelihood of New Madrid opening up? I think New Madrid's not going to be going anytime soon. I think it's more like, I mean, it does have this reoccurrence interval that's been decreasing. It's possible. But it could also be a sleeper for 50 more years. There's nothing that's inherently super critical about this moment for New Madrid. There's a certain element when you're forecasting that you just see the energy is just so much more active and alive. That's what's happening right now. Exactly like that. So we don't see that with New Madrid. It's basically saying, pay attention to me. The Venezuela quakes are a reminder to us to make sure we start building properly. Because you think that these people are ready for a magnitude 8? That's what you can get there. You think they're ready for a magnitude 8? No way. It would be very bad, like all-time disaster. America's heartland, magnitude 8, like they would survive, but it would be a big deal. So I don't think it's soon though. It could happen at any time. I don't think it's soon. We'll see. We'll have signs before that occurs. By God, we will have signs that something is happening there. You don't get big magnitude 8 activity as a complete surprise. All that has warning signs. If you pay attention, you'll catch it. So I'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for watching. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. I do this almost every day. I talk about earthquakes, I talk about volcanoes, geomagnetic storms, space weather, planetary alignments, solar activity, interstellar and cosmic forces, consciousness, everything, and much more. I could talk all day, but we don't have time for that. But I have cumulatively talked all day. So check out my channel, look at my work. You can go to my videos page and also my live streams page. Those are the two places I have content. I release updates also on my X account, where in between videos, some breaking earthquake, you can get my analysis there as soon as possible. I'm realizing that nowadays, people want some expert commentary and nothing's providing it. Everything's filtered through AI. So I only ever write words like myself. And so it's very odd to see all this AI writing, especially from people emailing you. And they're like emailing me an AI prompt or something. I mean, it's just everything I do, I write myself, I do my own research, and I just present myself for who I am. I have a Bachelor of Science from University of California, Davis, and I've just done a deep dive of research. I did geophysics all through California, working for 2 different companies in Northern California, but we did things all over. I was in Secrets to the Underground for Science Channel 2017, a couple of TV appearances, and I'm here, your Cosmic Bro. So thank you all, everyone. I'll see you all in the next video. Much love, prayers, and God bless.